Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this January 8th, 2019 County Commissioners meeting. My name is Steve Ewing, County Administrator. This is our new meeting of the year where we'll be choosing new chairman and vice chairman. So at this time, what I'd like to do is have everyone stand. This meeting is now called to order, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to have our elected officials who are being sworn in today. Denise Brandel, Court Administrator from Pipestone and Rock Counties, will be administering the oath. I'll have all the new elected officials come over in front of the plaque over there, and we'll do an en masse swearing in at this time. And just let everyone know, and on the video as well, that Sheriff Vreeman will not be here today to be sworn in. He'll be sworn in at a different time. There was a death in his family, and he was unable to attend.
Okay, so we're going to do it in mass, as Steve said. And I'm going to say I, and then you say your names, and when I say the duties of the office of, and you say whatever your office is, okay? If you all raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
And that I will discharge faithfully
And that I will discharge faithfully
the office of
County Commissioner
in the County of Pipestone,
in the County of Pipestone,
the State of Minnesota,
the State of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Very good.
Welcome aboard. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah, do you want to do that right now, Denise?
Sure, we can do that. Congratulations.
Yeah, Denise's presence is fine. She's got her official stamp or two to take her. We'll take care of those right now. You just said you did.
Oh, I know.
Thank you.
I'm gonna run up to work here a little bit. Let's just step on it.
Fancy looking.
Sure. Yeah, I can mine already down.
Actually set up a template on the computer.
Do they exist anymore? We just want our office. We do have a handy, don't we?
Yeah, say I sat down like, oh, there's a typewriter right there. One of them's for a report for you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good time.
Okay, at this time, we will have our election of chair and vice chair. At this time, I'll call for nominations for the position of chairman for 2019.
Mr. Chair, I'd nominate Chris Hollingsworth for the chairman position
I would like to second that.
for 2019.
We have a motion and a second on the floor for nomination of Chris Hollingsworth for chairman for 2019. Any discussion? I take that back. We need to see if there are any more nominations. Excuse me. Second time, are there any more nominations from the floor for the office of chairman? Are there any more nominations for the office of chairman, third time?
Cease and cast unanimous ballot.
Have a motion on the floor to cast unanimous ballot for Chris Hollingsworth as chair. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Congratulations, Chairman Hollingsworth.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, and you will now take over the meeting, and you will now call for a vice chair.
I open nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I would nominate Bruce Gorman.
I would like to second that.
Okay. We have a nomination second. Any further discussion? All right. Any further nominations? Any further nominations?
Mr. Chair, I move that we close nominations and cast unanimous ballot for Bruce Clement for vice chair.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. All right, next on the agenda, we have Rules of Procedure Resolution 59-01- on there. Oh, pardon me. We need approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda at this time?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to add under the 9:20 a.m., the last item in there says transportation projects. I would like to add review of county fee schedule. Review of county fee schedule. And under the consent agenda, item 3, commissioners' warrants, we have 3 add-on commissioners' warrants from January 7th to add to that list. Those were delivered to us this morning from the auditor's office. And if you flip the page over on your agenda, at 10 a.m., during the recycling update, Kyle Curie advised me that Norm Van Dyke will be attending the meeting, so if you want to make a note of that, that would be great. And finally, under other business, add Quarry Twin Theater update, and Auditor Treasurer Reich will be here for that as well. So that'll be we'll just catch that as another business as we get time. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Mr. Chair, with those corrections and additions, I'd move to approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right, moving forward with the agenda. First order of business is approval of the Rules of Procedure Resolution 59-01-19.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
A motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Next, we have the per diem setting resolution 59-02-19. We have a motion for approval.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay, auditor warrant authorization resolution 59-03-19. Is there a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Designated public off-and depositories resolution 59-05-19. Is there a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, I move.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, could we go back and hit number 5904-19, please?
Oh, workers' compensation.
Or workers' compensation?
Yep. Okay, workers' compensation elected official recognition resolution 59-01-19. Is there a,
I'd move to approve, Mr. Chair.
we have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Designation of official newspaper resolution 59-07-19. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Set commissioner meeting dates and times for 2019. We do have a list. Is there any other corrections to that? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion at this time.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we missed 5906-19 for statutory salaries for elected officials.
Okay, for auditor, treasurer, county attorney, county recorder, and county sheriff.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion for approval for resolution 59-06-2019?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay, set county board equalization date, Monday, June 17th at 7 p.m. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Committee appointments for 2019. I'd like to open this one for discussion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I want have an updated list for you. Under Planning and Zoning Commission, Mr. Bradley Cruselbrink will be going off of the Planning and Zoning Board, and the recommended appointment would be Mr. Cal Brower, and that term would run through 12/31 of '21. And then, so you've got that one. The next one down, Mr. Dan Miller, will be going off of the Planning and Zoning, and he has requested appointment to the Board of Adjustment for a term. His term expires the end of 18, and he is eligible for an appointment to that. Kyle Creer recommended that for him to go on that. So if that would be all right to do that. One you do have a choice on, Dan Miller's slot on the Planning and Zoning. You have two names in front of you for a possible appointment, either Mr. Glenn Johnson or Mr. Kerry Alderson. And it's a board choice of who you want to have serve in that position.
It's a recommendation by any of the commissioners at this time to fill the appointment. Would be the proper way of handling that then.
Motion would be good.
For which one?
Either one, it's your choice. There's no specific recommendation from Kyle Creer on this. The townships brought these forward
Sure.
to us. So it's just a matter of,
I would move to approve Cal Brower to the and zoning.
Things, okay.
I'm not familiar with the other two individuals. I don't know if anyone else is.
I'm not familiar with them either.
No, Cal Brower is going on for Burke and Osborne. Okay, so the two you have to choose from is either Glenn
that's-
Johnson
that's
or
done.
Carrie Alderson. So,
Well,
right? Carrie, right? Yeah.
Oh.
You did offer to serve, so we do have a choice of either Mr. Johnson or Mr. Alderson for the members of Grange and Fountain Prairie Township.
Okay.
seeing that Mr. Alderson came in attendance,
Yeah.
but this time I'll like to appoint him to the Planning and Zoning Board then.
I'll second it.
All right.
Okay?
All right, thank you. Moving on to the committee assignments, is there any changes that we'd like to make for
Yep.
2019?
Mr. Chairman, I got a few more here. If you
Sure, yep.
work with me for a second, then I'll turn it over to you. If you switch to page 2 for Extension Committee, Michelle Van Dyke has been reappointed through 2020. Mr. Tim Paulson is going off the board and is replaced by Judy D. Ryder, and she is through 2020. This should have been done last year, but apparently
Yeah.
got missed.
Tim's been off.
Tim's off, so this is housekeeping on those two. And Audrey Fritz and Alan Vander
Look.
Luck have been reappointed through 2021.
Do we need a motion to approve that, or is it just appointing them?
We can do it as a motion for the whole.
Okay.
On the third page, we will have to appoint two personnel to the Health Insurance Committee. That doesn't have to be done today, but we do have two. Lyle Skibout has resigned from the county, and Steve Weeds is retired as treasurer. So presumably replacing Steve Weeds with Tyler, and we should have a representative from the Highway Department to serve on that, so we'll get that.
Okay. Did anybody come forward with a recommendation?
We'll come back with a recommendation for you on that.
Fair enough. Okay.
I'll get with Kathy on that.
Okay.
Safety Committee as well, will be doing a couple of changes on that. I will be serving in the county administrator position at that, and I would like to recommend at this time that Kathy Feste be appointed to the Safety Committee in my stead in that slot. And only other one I had was Audit Committee, and that would change annually. So Board Chair would be Chris in that, and Vice Chair would be Bruce serving on that, along with Tyler and County Administrator, myself on that. Now I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. I'd like to have some discussion on our committee assignments for 2019. I have heard from a couple people and two commissioners as well about the Personnel Committee, about maybe getting a different body on that one. So, is there any recommendations or at this time, or any discussion on the matter?
Mr. Chair, do you have a recommendation or appointment that you'd like to see on that?
It's just my personal feelings. I'd like to see at least the board or vice chair on that. I'd just like a little more headway when we come to the meetings, especially when it comes to personnel. So I could appoint myself. I'd just like to know if Commissioner Coyman or Commissioner Nath would like to remain on the committee.
I wouldn't have a problem with you being on the board with us if I don't mind being on it. If somebody wants to take over my job, I'm okay with that too, but I think we don't meet that often, but when we do have several meetings sometimes when there's an opening or something. But if you'd like to have the chair on with the committee.
The thing is, then we get into the open meeting.
Right, we don't.
We only have two on.
We can only have two on it.
I've traditionally sat on an insurance committee. I'd be willing to swap out, so to speak, on that committee with one of you two if you're interested.
Well, I would support your decision then to place yourself on the Personnel Committee, and then if Commissioner Coiman is willing to change to a different committee. Is that what I understand?
I can, I'll go wherever. I'm flexible there, so.
Okay. And then Commissioner Nath, would you like to remain then on the committee? Okay.
And an alternate on there in case somebody can't make it, if somebody's.
Would you like to be the alternate then?
That could probably work if you're,
That,
give you somebody else to talk to too about things that have happened in the last several years here. so,
absolutely.
But that's.
I like that recommendation.
You.
I'd like to appoint you then as alternate.
Okay. Normally alternates don't go to every meeting anyway. I mean, I don't see any reason why we would pay alternates to go to every meeting of every event because of per diem and all that, so that's fine. Normally it would just be 2 at the meeting, so.
Okay. Very good. Any other changes for the 2019 for committee assignments?
Yeah, ag and rural development needs to be listed under AMC policy as it was before.
Which one was that, Luke?
AMC policy committees.
Under the AMC policy committees,
And that's a board that you've previously chaired, correct?
yeah.
And have been vice chair a long time?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was ag and rural development.
Right.
Okay. Well-
It was on last year's. I don't know why I didn't make
That's fine.
this list, but.
I'll appoint Commissioner Johnson then to the Ag and Rural Board for AMC.
On drug task force, I'm listed on there, and I guess I'd like to see Les listed as the alternate there. He's been to several of those meetings in the past,
Okay. Okay.
more than I have, I think. But
Was Les Nath as alternate? Okay.
Which one was that again, Mr. Chairman?
Southwest Drug Task Force, I think page 2.
And that'll be now Les.
Okay.
to be the alternate.
Alternate, okay.
I was also going to do a change up to the building and grounds, since I'm going to be taking on a couple more meetings with being chair. I'm going to appoint Commissioner Wildermuth in my absence on that board. I think his experience with his electrical background and everything would be serve that board very well.
Do you want to be an alternate there, or is that just?
There's 2 commissioners, so
Two.
it'll be Commissioner Nath and Commissioner Wildermuth then.
So you're going to go off of that one?
I'll go off that one and appoint Commissioner Wildermuth.
Okay.
How's Bruce doing on the insurance end?
I will remain, otherwise.
Okay.
And then Commissioner Coiman, did you have any interest in insurance committee? Otherwise, I will remain.
That if you want to, or I'll be an alternate or
We only
something.
meet a couple times a year on that.
I'm okay with it, unless you want us to keep it, that's fine too.
Well, considering you're taking it up.
I can take it if you
Okay.
want to.
I'll point to that one.
Mr. Chairman, you're stepping down from the Health Insurance Committee then? Or you-
Correct.
Okay. And Commissioner Coiman?
Luke is primary and I would be the alternate there.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's Prime West I'm looking at, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, for the health insurance. I
Health
think
insurance,
we
this
both
would be,
go.
yeah, this would be for both.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if we need the Central School Committee anymore at this time.
How often did we meet last year on that? At all?
School is gonna be gone.
Right. So maybe as needed.
It's out of our hands.
Correct.
Right.
Other than the final disposition of the property, but that would be, we don't need a specific committee.
board
Yeah, we
decision.
don't need a committee for that.
Right.
No, that's just a matter of.
So we'll disband
Consensus
that
to
one.
dissolve that committee at this time? Okay.
That's my recommendation.
I agree with that.
And we'll dissolve that committee at this time? Are there any other changes anybody would like to see?
We are getting a little more active with our armed services and I'd like to see an alternate on that as well, maybe Les. I know Les has been involved with that to some degree too.
Sure.
Maybe as an alternate, if there's a meeting that we need, something like that, I think that would be good.
And
Which committee is this?
Armed Services.
Armed Services?
Don't want to have Wes have any more meetings than he already has a lot.
Okay, I don't see any problem with adding an alternate to that committee. I'd like to open up some discussion about the Transportation Alliance. Commissioner Johnson and I get a lot of information and get a lot of invites from being on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, as well as I do from being on the Transportation Infrastructure Board for AMC. I know Commissioner Johnson's expressed interest, has added that as a committee assignment for 2019. I think there's only maybe 2 meetings a year that.
Yeah, I don't think they meet that often, but
That,
road funding's gonna be pretty high on the priority list. Moving forward, it'd be nice to have a little more input on down here.
Housekeeping.
the one info we don't have is the annual dues for that. For,
That, for that rural county caucus, that's a different discussion. Well, and members of Transportation Alliance.
okay.
Are you talking about
Discussion on
transit?
It's
Or Transportation Alliance is something we already belong to. And
correct.
It's basically just a group that lobbies for highway funding, both federally and state.
I'd just like to add that to the committee assignments for 2019. I think we've had some positive traction with the Highway 23 Coalition, and I think this is a little bit more of an established group. So. And then one other was the Rural County Caucus. They do meet at AMC once or twice a year. I know Commissioner Johnson has sat in those meetings previously. We are not part of the Rural County Caucus. I'd like to open up to some discussion on that.
Yeah, it's something we can talk about later too. I tried to reach out to Dan Larson to find out what their dues were, and, maybe even have them come down and present sometime. But I didn't hear back from them. I just tried to
Come back to that one.
Yeah,
Okay,
table it for now.
Okay.
fair enough. Any other discussion on 2019 committee assignments?
Mr. Chairman, go back to Transportation Alliance. Who's going to represent that? That's a new one, isn't it?
Correct. I'd like to appoint Commissioner Johnson, myself, since we're on the Road and Bridge Committee, and likewise, I'm also involved with transportation infrastructure through AMC.
Commissioner Nath pointed out on page 3, second column, Southwest Mental Health Board. Marlene Tragetzer should be replaced with Jerry Raymond, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
He was appointed, I
I'll make
believe, in
that
October.
Just a housekeeping.
Yeah, yep. Is there any other discussion from the board at this time on 2019 committee assignments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion, is there a second? A motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose the same. Motion carries. Moving along, next is AMC committee appointments for 2019. Is there any wish to change our assignments at this time? Otherwise, I'll
Make
entertain.
sure I have them right on here, Environment and Natural Resources. Commissioner Johnson, is that correct?
Yes.
Fill it in as I go. In General Government is Commissioner Nath, is that correct?
Yep.
Health and Human Services, Commissioner Wildermuth.
Correct.
Public Safety is Commissioner Coiman. And Transportation and Infrastructure is Chairman Hollingsworth, correct?
Correct. And then we also need to add the ag and rural
Development.
rural development for Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, list that
Going through the
one.
list here, I don't even see that on there. So
It's a list here, Chris.
this is,
Oh, that one? Okay.
Yeah.
So is that a ad hoc different
It's an advisory. committee.
advisory? Okay.
Advisory.
So I wrote that in as the Ag and Rural Development, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, and you're serving in that capacity?
Right.
Okay, got it.
Wasn't there another AMC board, a newer one, a research and development, or
Yeah, it's on our,
is it on there already listed?
it is.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, below that, we have the AMC voting delegates. Those are listed on page 4, second column at the top. Commissioners, Wildermuth, Chairman Hollingsworth, Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Coyman, Commissioner Nath, myself, County Administrator, Highway Engineer Bergman, Auditor Treasurer Rice. Rice, any changes to that?
No,
Okay.
that's good.
That way I'll get that back to AMC then.
Okay. Okay, if we're squared away with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the AMC committee appointments for 2019.
And second.
Yep. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Next on the list, we have transportation projects website publication for 2019. And I believe that's just with continuing to post those online.
Just a continuation, we just do that annually.
Okay.
Highway Engineer Bergman recommended that we do this again.
Okay. Entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second? Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. And then lastly, review of county fee schedule for 2019. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, let's take a look at this, if you would, please. Commissioner Johnson requested to bring this up for this meeting. I said, yes, we can certainly do that. Any changes we make to this will require a public hearing.
Is there any notable changes from last year, or is it pretty much the same?
No changes yet. It's if we want to have changes. I know a while back, we were discussing potentially changing some of the fairground rental rates.
For some of the buildings?
Right, and so I didn't know if that was something we wanted to look at, or,
I'd like to have some discussion on that topic. I know we've brought that up a few times.
But if we're gonna change it, we have to have a public hearing, right?
It would be a recommended change, then we'd
So
have, we'd
I
have a hearing on
recommend we
it.
table it and bring it up at a later date for the public hearing.
Okay, agreed.
So we're going to recommend some changes. In the
Right.
meantime, we can look at this and figure it out.
I
Okay.
mean, don't you have to have changes proposed to have a public hearing?
Right, we'll have to discuss them and then go to a public hearing.
Oh, not set a public hearing yet, just discuss it at a future meeting.
Okay, perfect.
We'll just time to look it over.
Mr. Chair, would it make sense then to solicit some input then from the various department heads that are involved in some of these, see what their recommendations would be for fees as well? I see we're talking, some of these are making copies and so forth as well, too.
I think Steve could forward
I will
this
do
to
that.
some of the,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
to the sheriff.
I'll forward it out to all the
Department heads.
department heads, see if there's any changes
Get some
recommended.
input from them.
Adjustments would be appropriate.
No, that's
If we have any, we'll
recommendation.
go ahead and make a list, and then we'll come back and discuss at a later date.
Okay, we'll table it at this time.
So,
Okay.
tabled.
Okay, moving on, we have the approval of the consent agenda, and those will include the approval of the minutes from January 2nd, 2019 meeting, auditor warrants of 1/4/19, commissioner warrants, hospital warrants, a total of $302,305.52, and treasurer's report, December 2018.
And the 3 add-on ones.
And then, 3 commissioner add-on warrants, those totals handy?
I'd move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have Kyle Creer, zoning administrator.
We're a little ahead. Oh, I guess
I can come up and do a few things before.
Sure, sounds good.
There's probably visitors coming for some of the things on the agenda, so we probably want to wait till 10 o'clock for that. But one thing that I have is our Planning Commission and Board of Adjustments appointments. And just wanted to present that to you. We have two individuals going off the Planning Commission who have maxed out on their term limits. Brad Kruselbrink and Dan Miller both have served 9 years on the Planning Commission. I sent a letter to the 4 townships that they represent, asking for recommendations, and I received response from all 4 townships. Burke and Osborne both recommended Cal Brower as a replacement for Burke and Osborne. And in Fountain Prairie and Grange, I received 2 names. Both of the individuals live in Fountain Prairie. And the individuals are Kerry Alderson and Glenn Johnson are the recommendations. So,
We've already dealt with that.
what's that? Oh, you've already done that? Okay, so you're way ahead of me. Should have came earlier, so.
We did that as part of the.
Did you also do the
committee.
Board of Adjustments?
Yes.
And that was Dan Miller as an appointment? Perfect. Okay,
Make
Well,
your job
you guys-
easier today.
you're way ahead of me then, should have spoke up.
And Kurt Johnson stayed on too, because it has a 2018 date.
No, Kurt would be off of the Board of Adjustments.
Okay, he's going off.
Yep. Yeah, so Kurt would be off, and then Dan would be the full-time replacement for Kurt then.
And it goes through 2021,
Whose term?
Dan's.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
they're 3-year terms, so. Any questions on the Planning Commission, Board of Adjustments that you guys have? Okay, and I was kind of wanting, Norm Van Dyke was planning to come also to give you a solid waste update. I don't believe he was going to be here until probably about 10:15.
Okay, Mr. Creer, would you like to wait to present then?
It might be best unless you want me to, because one of the action items I did have for you also was determining if we wanted to sell the recycling totes to rural residents, but I think Norm had some input on that also.
Sure. Yeah, I probably should wait for him to be.
So I think it would be good if we could wait.
Okay. Is there any other business we can move up ahead to fill in meantime? Or-
Chairman, we could step into other business. I could also get Highway Engineer Bergman up here too. He had just had a brief discussion on the County State Aid Highway 25.
About the Corey Twin update thing there, is that?
Tyler here?
Not.
Otherwise, we can take a break.
Otherwise, we can
Okay.
take a short recess, take a 15-minute recess.
Okay.
Okay. We'll reconvene the meeting at this time. I'd like to invite up Kyle Creer, zoning administrator.
Okay, I have, we had a conditional use request from Next Era for a laydown yard and an operation and maintenance building to be located in Etna, Section 28 in the northeast quarter. The Planning Commission held a conditional use permit and on December 17th, and I forwarded to you in your packets the recommendations of the Planning Commission. And I also have Next Era here. I think they do want to give a short presentation if you'd like them to just kind of give a summary of the project. And then if you want me to make the recommendations after that and
Sure.
take
I'd like
input
to-
or I
Like it
can,
if they put on a summary, that'd be nice.
great. So Danelle, if you want to just go, you can come up here too. Just have a chair.
Like it did go through. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for making time for us this morning. You guys have hard copies. I tried to send it, but I'm not sure if it's going to come in time, so I'll just go ahead and move forward. I've met with you guys before and talked a little bit about our project. I'm just going to go through a very brief update of where we're at. This is, of course, the repower of our existing 100-megawatt project, taking out 137 of the existing turbines and putting in 44 new turbines. I'm not going to go into who we are. We're NextEra. We've been operating assets in Pipestone County for the last 20 years. Have a number of assets in the state of Minnesota as well as across North America. Thank you. Oh, I clicked off something. That's okay.
Second one.
I don't know. Start the slideshow.
Do you want the slide?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties. So again, Lake Benton is wholly owned by NextEra. The repowered project, however, will be sold to Northern States Power XL Energy post-commercial operations. The project's in Pipestone County. The existing project's 100 megawatts. It'll be 100.2 at the repower. Currently, it has 137 750 kilowatt hour Zons. We're going to put in 39 GE 2.3 megawatt machines and 5 GE 2.1 megawatt machines. I just heard this morning our final PUC hearing is scheduled for February 7th. And if all goes well, we would expect to be able to get a notice to proceed with decommissioning of the existing asset starting at the end of March, weather permitting. So what we're asking for today is a proposed O&M building, approximately 5 acres, that is going to be on private ag land that is currently signed on a purchase option with the landowners who are present as well as on the same property, a proposed temporary laydown which will comprise approximately 15 acres, also signed on a lease with private landowners. There is a site layout in here, but I think the application has a much better version of it. Just a couple things on construction impact mitigation. We actually have a meeting with Nick Bergman and our consultants Westwood on the 17th of this month to finalize the details for all road use agreements. Obviously, we'll comply with all county ordinances for that. We will be also submitting a detailed stormwater pollution prevention plan through the Minnesota PCA, and it will be managed on site to mitigate any water erosion. And then trash and debris, we'll be utilizing closed dumpsters within the laydown yard. The site will be patrolled by crews to clear away any wind-strewn debris, and we'll have open communication, obviously, with the landowners to rectify any concerns that they may have.
Thank you.
Any questions for Danelle on the project?
Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, the Planning Commission did, I'm not going to go through the summary since Danelle already did that, but the Planning Commission, like I said, held the hearing and making a recommendation for the county board to approve the laydown yard and the O&M building as they were presented, provided that they follow all other state and federal requirements. So that is the recommendation from the Planning Commission. Is there any questions for me? And I know there might be some public comments, so.
Like I said, this time, if anyone doesn't have any comments, we'll open up some public comments. If anyone has anything to say, they can step up to the podium.
Hello, my name is Attorney Taliesin Barrows. I'm not here on behalf of Dave Calamine. We have a couple concerns with this project, and it boils down to the fact that we don't believe there was enough findings by the Planning Commission to recommend this moving forward at this time. Pipestone County Ordinance for conditional use permits actually has 7 different factors that have to be found by the Planning Commission before they can recommend a conditional use permit be done. In this case, only 2 were actually found in the proposed findings drafted by the Planning Commission. Those 2 were that it wouldn't be injurious to, the conditional use permit would not be injurious to public health, and that that it would also not impede the normal and orderly development. However, there's 5 other factors that aren't considered. One of the major concerns that we have is one of the factors, and that's There's adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and necessary facilities have been or will be provided. There's some concern by local landowners that the road access to the proposed site isn't suitable for the purposes being intended for the laydown yard and the O&M building. It's gravel, it's got a sharp bend located right near it, and there's some concern with drainage. There's water that flows over the road, and these could cause issues moving forward for both local landowners in trying to get access to their own properties. And there's a lot of farms, so there's a lot of trucks that also access to drop off corn, get milled, and such from local farm owners. And the increased traffic that will be on this road due to the proposed O&M building, and especially the laydown yard, will cause some concern. In the Planning Commission, there was, in the minutes, they stated that there was a proposed or a planned civil consultant was going to look at the state of the roads, but however, that hasn't been done yet. The local landowners don't believe this should move forward until the pollution prevention plan, which is also said was going to be developed, that and these consultants actually have a chance to investigate the state of the roads, investigate how the runoff from the laydown yard will affect the local area. Until these have actually been done, they don't believe this should move forward, and it actually can't until the commission has enough, the Planning Commission has enough facts to find these 7 factors, which they have not done at this time. Therefore, we are asking that this be sent back to the Planning Commission for an additional hearing and for full findings that should be made on this proposed O&M building and laydown yard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. The concern with the runoff then, so is your client's major concern then with the permanent O&M facility or the temporary laydown yard?
The temporary laydown yard is the main concern because when it comes to dismantling the wind towers, a lot of the wind towers can have issues with leaking oil and such, and there's concerns that when they get washed off and dismantled, that runoff will cause pollution in the local creeks and local actual ground. So until an actual the pollution prevention plan has been done and recommendations on how they can prevent this pollution from occurring and prevent it from leaking into any local water sources or land, ground, that's the concern is the laydown yard, not the O&M building itself for the pollution.
I guess my question then to you, Danielle, would be the concern about the oil. When these nacelles are taken down from the towers, isn't that oil pumped out of those gearboxes before they're taken down?
Yes, absolutely. And we've been working in depth with Minnesota Pollution Control Agency on exactly how we're going to decommission this asset in conjunction with Excel.
And this laydown yard, again, this is a temporary laydown yard, so it's not going to have a hard surface put on it. You're not peeling the dirt back and putting down gravel or anything else. It's going to be basically the earth as it is now.
No, they'll definitely be putting gravel down for the laydown yard temporarily, but it is temporary and it will be reclaimed once construction is completed.
Okay. And how long are you anticipating using the laydown yard? 12 months, 24 months?
The lease is for 24 months, but usually we do reclamation within a year.
Very good.
And then obviously as to the road use, we are going to work very closely. Our consultant has completed their studies, and now we were just waiting to get on the schedule with the county officials to talk about what that road use agreement looks like, and obviously we'll comply with all requirements.
Which access road do you anticipate using, that north-south one, which is 170th Avenue?
It would be the north-south.
The north-south
Right.
one, that 170th Avenue.
The discussion at the Planning Commission meeting was about the traffic. We did discuss the traffic. The primary traffic is going to be coming off of Highway 23, and that was discussed, and that was kind of the agreed upon primary use road would be just 23 to the site. The Planning Commission did also discuss drainage. It was. Most of the Planning Commission, if not all, were familiar with the site. The site drains to the north, and the discussion that was held about drainage and whether or not it was adequate more so stemmed around issues that the township, at least the concerns that we heard that night, were that the township has not adequately maintained the drainage in the road ditch, and that there's some private tile blowouts on Highway 23 Both of those items, the response from the planning commission is that they did not feel that it was relevant to the application on how those issues are being addressed, and that they are something that should be discussed and handled privately with either the landowner, DOT, or the township. So they were discussed quite lengthy at the planning commission hearing, and that was the planning commission's response to those items.
Another question then, with 170th Avenue where it intersects with Highway 23, in the past, because of the longer loads and so forth, generally the developer will build those intersections up and build the roads up. And our past experience is quite often when the project is done, the roads are in better shape than they were before.
That's absolutely true.
That intersection then, would there be any rationale to leaving that intersection a little bit wider? I know you always reclaim back, and that's part of your permitting is reclaim back, but maybe you should have discussions with the township when it's all said and done, what they would like. They might want to leave some of that wider than what it is now, so.
Absolutely, and we can happily write that into our road use agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any further comments or questions?
Does 170th typically flood over at that location?
That would be a better question for the residents of that area. I'm not typically there at the time of flooding.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? One more time, is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak?
Mr. Chair, I will move that we do approve this conditional use permit to them.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there
Second that.
a second? Any further discussion? Okay, all,
Just a clarification, that would be, it's for both the laydown yard and for the O&M building?
Yes.
Because there are two separate applications.
Okay, then my motion is that we approve both applications.
okay.
Thank you.
Do you second the amended motion?
Yes, that's fine.
We have motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next item I have is recycling update, and I see Norm is here. Norm, if you want to come on up.
Good morning.
Floor is yours.
Let's go, okay.
Yeah, Norm and I have been talking quite often the last couple months since the single stream recycling started. Norm thought it would be beneficial for you to hear kind of an update on how things are going. We are still delivering containers to individuals that were either missed, businesses that want to come on now, and we also have the trailer court here in Pipestone that did not receive containers that will be. So we're still adjusting the overall program yet. So, but Norm, you go ahead and just give them an update.
But otherwise, everything is really going well with all the towns. For instance, Pipestone started out the first 2 times, over 850 totes were out every time. Last week they were up to 970, so everything is increasing big time.
How many was it prior to that?
Prior to that, in the 2-day recycling thing, you know, Tuesday and a Wednesday, there was probably 150 out at the most. A lot of times less than that,
Okay,
just in Pipestone.
right.
Edgerton has had over 300 every week. Jasper, I think, they got 273 residents, and at one time they had 192 out.
Wow.
Holland, Ruthven, all the small towns, they're really doing good.
Good.
We've been checking them all since we started, me and one of my other hired men. And in the first 2 weeks, we checked every tote that was out in every town. We left pretty early in the morning, and it was really surprising. I think that one day we only tagged like 11 of them in Pipestone out of 800 and some. I probably had styrofoam or whatever that wasn't supposed to be in it. But other than that, it's really surprised me. It's really going good.
Mr. Chair. I heard some comments from people in Jasper, like some of these older people, they say they can probably go 2 months before they gotta take it out, so that's gonna affect your counts too. I know,
Yeah.
like ours,
Yeah.
we can get by with once a month setting it out, but
Yep, yep. And granted, like last week was, Christmas and New Year's or whatever. There was a lot of cardboard out and stuff like that.
yeah.
But other than that, we had one complaint last week that somebody seen us that we drive right alongside with the car, then we open up the lid, and we're going through it, and this certain person didn't like that too well, but so I called Kyle, and Kyle says, well, when it's on the curb, it's yours.
Was it
We were
me?
just
It
checking.
wasn't me, was it?
I don't think you've ever had any out
I
yet.
got you guys one day looking in my trash, but I didn't know if it turned me in or not.
That was for the sheriff.
So, but I just wanted to say that it's really been going good, and people still don't know that styrofoam ain't recyclable, so that's what a lot of tags are about. And we're gonna have to get a little stricter in the next month or so. People are still putting it in bags instead of loose. And then they're finding some stuff in bags over there. So he said, just, being you're just starting, it's gonna be, it's different for everybody. Just kind of clamp down on that a little bit, so.
How many bins are you flagging per week on an average? Is it a lot or not too many?
There were 3 today in Edgerton. Last week in Pipestone, out of 900 and some, I think there were 11.
Small percentage.
And then there's quite a few people that, well, not a lot. Maybe last week in Pipestone, we had 50 of them that had them set around. Every town's got that.
Yeah.
And Pipestone's gonna have more because it's bigger.
Yeah, they're supposed to be set out so that the wheels are facing the house and they open
Yeah.
towards the road.
If it don't, then the arm sometimes will drop it.
Norm, does it also cause a problem if people have got 2 totes, one recycling and one garbage, if they're too close together, does it make it hard to pick it up?
Some of them have that, but then when we drive by it, we separate them.
They just need a little space so you can get your arm in there. And then you mentioned over there, so am I assuming that the recyclables are going to Millennium and Sioux Falls then?
Yep,
How's that going? Any feedback from them? How's that looking?
they're working with us real fine. And like he said, you're gonna have a bag, people gotta get used to this, and he said just try and keep educating them or whatever, and all the advertising that they've done so far, Kyle and Stephanie have done a great job. I mean, I think it's going pretty good.
We've kind of taken over the educational stuff for
Yeah.
this first transition,
Yeah.
primarily because it was part of the grant application requirements. So I think the bags worked really well,
Yep.
having those attached to the bins when they were delivered. Stephanie's been keeping up a Facebook site, and that's getting activity and comments and feedback from individuals. We've got a radio ad running, and we can add to those, but I think also that the stickers are a big component, that letting people know what's wrong if they aren't getting picked up.
I was encouraged too to see Stephanie's, how active she's been on Facebook with that too, and I've even seen some comments from Van Dyke too to help get everyone on the same page too.
Right,
And I think that open thread of communication is going a long way, so.
I think it helps too that they're a different color than anything else out there. And if you drive, for example, into Pipestone this morning and you drive down the street, there's
Yeah.
dozens of them up and down the street.
Even if they're Green Bay
Very
colors.
noticeable, and I think it helps remind their neighbors and other people that, hey, this is happening, and they get to be part of it just by seeing their neighbors bring out these new totes. And I think, regardless of what town you go in, you notice it. And I think that's a big help for it. It kind of promotes itself in that way.
We don't have any tonnage updates as of yet, I don't believe, but that'll be something I'll be bringing to the board in the future.
I'll find that out for sure when they get, automatically sends us tonnage every month. I think they do that about the middle of the month. But Brad's been kind of taking care of it. And without the cardboard, I think he was a little over, right around 45 ton. So with the cardboard and everything, we might be 50. Maybe a little more. But other than that, we just want to let you guys know that it's going all right.
Good.
Kyle, are you still receiving calls from people that do not want a container on their property?
We have not received any of those since the early on, so we're not getting any more of those. We're getting a few about people not getting picked up, and we have talked with Van Dyke's. They are out there at 6 o'clock, so I know Brad has said that, or they've said, different ones have said that, they see people scrambling to get out there to get their bins out if they haven't set them out the night before. So it's recommended that people get them out the night before. But calls have subsided significantly from the very beginning. Because the city was getting calls, Van Dyke's were, we were, and now we're just getting a few on the collection day primarily.
The calls that we've had of the people that didn't want them, we more or less told them, well, there's a lot of elderly people. Use it. Don't bring it out right away, but the tote has to stay with the house, because if you move, the tote's got to stay there.
The totes are registered to that address.
Address, everything is on a computer, so.
There's a number on them, so.
Yeah, I guess if they don't want to use it, set it back at the house.
I know we've talked about this before. I think we have to be very careful about that, though, because it is private property, and we cannot force somebody to take something on private property that they don't want. We can explain to them the purpose of it, but we can't be strong-arming people either.
So, I guess me and Kyle talked about that. When it first got brought up, just say in all the towns, all of a sudden you've got 20 people that don't want a tote. So you go get that. Down the road, everybody finds out, well, they didn't got a tote, why do I gotta have one? That kind of goes against the whole, the nature of the thing. That's why they got the tote, to increase recycling,
I understand what you're saying, but people have to buy into the idea. We
Yeah,
cannot
and-
force people to do this.
And I told Kyle, like, when we bet on the contract, and every hauler who bet on it, if the house is there, they get a tote. The whole thing is gonna defeat the purpose sooner or later, if a guy keeps doing it.
But we've got no choice, because we cannot force private property owners to take something on the property they don't want. We have to get people to understand the benefit of it, and through education, and tell them that this is a good program, but we can't be strong-arming people.
I don't think we're strong.
I don't think it's
Anybody, we
gonna be a
just
big
kinda told
problem. I think people are accepting it very widely, and when they see their neighbors using the thing, they'll embrace the idea and go ahead and start using it. It makes sense. It's less work for them in the long run to dump the stuff in there and roll it out there every 2 weeks or whatever the case might be, and if they can't do it, they better just call Kyle and turn the tote in. When they move on, we'll bring the tote back.
I've had a couple phone calls complaining about the size. I said, well, one size would distribute it throughout. They said, well, we really don't want it. I said, well, you're paying for it, you might as well keep it. So,
They'll get used to the idea and use it.
Right now, for numbers, we've got 2,746 residence bins that are out there and 230 business bins. So we were initially, I was projecting right around 3,300, assuming about 3,000 residential. We're probably going to be right around the 2,800 for residential, and then the business, like I said, continues to increase. So hopefully we will get to close to that 300 as new businesses that start seeing the benefit of having a bin will continue to call.
About how many bins are still in surplus?
We received 3,400.
34?
So we're in pretty good shape there. And that brings up my other item. I've had several calls from rural residents asking if they could get a recycling bin. And I tried to encourage them to just not even go there, but they still are, persistent, saying they would really like to have a bin, and they would be willing to buy them if need be. So I wanted to ask the board, and I know Norm, you maybe have a few comments on this too, but we purchased the bins. The actual cost when we got them all here ended up being $63.35. And I just wanted the board to discuss this, and if you do want to sell them to rural residents, to provide me a recommendation on what you would like me to charge.
I'd like to hear from Norm first on that.
Well, what Kyle said, that he had somebody that wanted 3 of them, or buy 3 of them, or whatever, and then he would haul them to town. And I said, well, what they're gonna do is, and I would do it too, they're gonna drop the bin off and take one out of the shed. So that's gonna screw up your,
Yeah, inventory.
inventory, and so I don't know how a guy would keep track of that, Granted, there's gonna be another bin back there, but somewhere along the line,
All the serial numbers.
they're gonna start disappearing. But if they buy it, you don't care, because they paid for it, it's theirs.
Would that affect you as far as picking them up then? You wouldn't pick up outside of town, you would have them bring them to town, right?
They'd have to bring it into town. So, I don't know.
Kyle, is that the purpose that these individuals have approached you about wanting a bin, is to be able to put their recyclables in it, bring it to town, or they want it for some other uses?
No, my understanding is that's what they would use it for. So they would use it for recycling. It would, and I understand it, because if you have a bin in your garage and you're, for kids and everybody else, it's just a convenient disposal option rather than having buying a garbage can or whatever you might have. It just, or if you had more of maybe you had a smaller business or something out in the rural, or I don't know what it might be, but I think it's just more of a convenience factor and keep things more simple.
So how would they get them unloaded then? They'd bring them into where the roll-offs are at?
Well, and that was my concern, or that's why I kind of suggested not to really go down this road, but you would just throw them in the back of the pickup, bring them to town, and either you would tip them into the existing bins that are in the sheds, or like Norm said, you potentially could swap them out if the other ones were empty. But serial numbers, I don't, as long as there's a bin, I guess it doesn't really matter to me, but. And I don't expect this to be something that popular that will have 50% of the rural residents buying recycling bins, but.
Yeah, I can't envision how it could possibly work for them to swap a bin out, because that would defeat the whole purpose. Plus, the Norm wouldn't be compensated for having to pick up another bin in town. That's not what the program's about.
Well, there's currently around 12 in each shed. So if they were to come in, they would dump their material into an empty bin, or they would
Swap it around.
they would just exchange it, so the count would stay the same.
Yeah, I was thinking
Stay
of
the same.
roll-offs. I wasn't thinking about the sheds where
No.
you got bins at the shed. I wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah, the roll-offs, that would not work.
No.
If it was Pipestone, but all the other cities have sheds where they have bins in the sheds.
Yeah, or the carts.
But they
yeah.
can just dump it into the roll-off and take their container home with them
Yep.
if they want to.
Yeah, if they came to Pipestone and
Yeah.
used the roll-offs, but when they're going to the other communities, they've got the carts. I can see what you're saying. They're gonna swap cart for cart, and that'd really mess you up. So, yeah, that's,
Or you end up, you bring one in, take 3 home.
I would hope not.
Well, there's been a few stolen already.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Have you been getting a lot of material in the sheds yet?
That really went down. Yep.
well, also back to the question with the carts as well, too, because we did receive a grant to buy these carts, and we bought the amount that we need. So for us to go ahead and retail those back out again really wouldn't be appropriate either. I don't see, I can understand somebody wanting to buy surplus property from us, but it's not really surplus property. So I don't know if selling carts would be such a good idea.
I guess if I was a farmer, instead of, they're kind of clumsy once you start trying to dump them by hand. I'd put it in 2 30-gallon garbage cans and take it into the,
Right.
Just dump it into the shed would be just as easy, or actually easier. But
but yeah, that's not my problem, that you guys is.
we have some rural people in the audience today. I don't know if they would have any comments about their recycling and how they are interested or not interested or don't care. Or
Any comments from the public on the topic? No?
I think the way it's being done right now is working real well in the towns. We have to live in the town. The only problem we got is when the wind comes up. Set that thing on at night, you better have it tied down or it'll be all over the neighbor's lawn.
That's true.
That's the only difficult part.
We have that in the city limits too, but not quite as much as out in the country where it's
Yeah,
not
that's
protected.
where I see the plow and that's the only thing that I know. No, otherwise it works real fine.
Okay.
The way it's-
I guess I wouldn't have a problem selling them some for $50 a piece if they want to buy them, but like you said, I think it's just as easy to take smaller ones, take them to town. Easier to handle, dump them into the containers that are in the sheds.
Yeah.
But
That's what the sheds are for, is for the rural people.
Yeah.
They can buy their own little garbage cans or whatever, bring them in and dump them.
Yeah. Maybe if it gets a little more traction, maybe we could revisit that.
if somebody wants
Down the
one and
road.
they live right on the route where you go, like if you live right on the edge of Holland and the truck's going by every week anyway,
Yeah.
that would make sense to have them, but, you know, I don't know.
Had that
Everybody's got a little
already with,
different situation there.
We've had that already with, and I don't know if he called or not, Buckridge, you know where he lives,
Yeah.
10 acres.
He's outside the
right
city.
Across the road from 5, but he's out of the city limits, so he didn't get one.
Mhm.
I said, well, you're gonna have to call Kyle about that, but yeah, he's more or less in
But you
town.
go by there every day or whenever anyway, so, you know, in those cases, they could easily get one and use that service.
Across the street is in the city limits, and he's out on the other side of the street, and he's out of city limits. It's kind of a screwy thing. Yep, well,
You just have to work with some of those people that are on the edge of
Yeah.
town, if that works for them, or even if they live in the country, if you go
that's
by there
not a
every week.
problem.
You know, so.
Actually, Kyle, in addressing that situation where you got it right on the boundary there, I don't see any problem with giving you the authority to administer that. And if you got somebody that's just across the street from somebody else, I don't see why we can't add that to our list and make it part of ours. Do you guys?
I agree with that.
I don't think we have to be that specific about city limits, not city limits. But again, you've got the discretion to go ahead and administer that program the way you see fit.
Yeah, I just didn't want to start selling containers to the rural people without coming to you and getting,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I don't think selling the containers is such a good idea.
Maybe they want to use them to store feed in them or something.
Oh, that's a realistic possibility.
Easily do that.
Yeah.
Buy a feed bunk.
You'd mentioned $50 arbitrarily. Our cost is more than that.
Yeah, but grant, we don't have that much in it, so.
All right, does anybody have any more questions for Norm? Or-
Thanks, Norm.
yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
all right, so don't sell them to rural people, correct? Or we're not going to sell them? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Norm.
All right, yeah, see you guys.
And the last item I have on the agenda is the L&O Power Local Governmental Agreement. And you all should have received a letter from the Public Utilities Commission. And I believe there's a representative here for L&O if you do have questions. You want to come on up? Sure. Did you have a? I'm Kurt. Okay, nice to meet you, Kurt. Do you want me to explain, or do you want to just?
However you want to handle
Okay,
it.
I can start. I received a conditional use permit request from L&O, and then I also received this letter from the Public Utilities Commission. Utilities have the ability to request authorization of, requesting who they would like as their LGU. In this case, I talked with the state. A lot of times, smaller projects, line upgrades, things like that, they would rather permit these locally rather than going through the state. The main difference between going through the state and going locally is when you go through the state, you kind of lose that local connection. You have the local public hearing with the conditional use permit. And the other thing is that when it gets up to the state level, they require alternatives and other things to be considered more so than what we would here at the local level. So the request from L&O is to pursue the local permit from the county. We would go through the conditional use permit process, but it does also trigger having a 115 kV line that we go through an environmental review. So the typical process that's followed on this is that the county is obligated to do the environmental assessment for the 115 kV, but the way that actually works, and Kurt will explain this, is that their consultants will basically put together the environmental assessment, publish it as required by statute for the county, but the county is actually responsible for it. And that's what this letter basically, identifies and lays out. So if the county is opposed to accepting that responsibility, we have 60 days to notify the state of that. So that's kind of a summary of what this letter is for and what I'm coming to you and kind of acknowledging that we are accepting that LGU responsibility. So Kurt, if you have anything
Yeah,
more?
just to add, the LGU stands for Local Governmental Unit, or,
Yep, local governmental unit.
correct.
Yep.
That's the responsible governmental authority for permitting or conditional use permitting of electrical power lines of a certain degree. So the existing power line runs from what we call our rural Holland area down to the Pipestone area, about a 7-mile transition. I'm not sure if you've received all that information or not, but yes, so yes, you've gotten the background information on that. And just due to the proximity of the line route today does jog a half-mile into the middle of the field and jog back out again. So just as a direct A to B, point to point, as you know, the shortest distance would be to traverse directly down, straight down the adjacent to the road right away to accommodate the power line. The power line that's there, as described, is approaching 60 years in age. I believe 1962 is when it was originally constructed. And due to age, but primarily capacity. The capacity of the line, we're getting to a point where it's the smallest conductor in the area for our power lines, and we need to upgrade it for capacity and age reasons. So that's kind of the background behind it, and just the line route is envisioned to go straight down the road instead of jogging out into the field for obvious reasons. And like Kyle stated, because even though today it is a 69 kV line, and in the near future it will remain energized at 69 kV. However, in his need dictates going forward based on loading and development of area electrical loads, there may be a need to convert it to 115 kV. So when we construct this line, it will be constructed at a higher voltage capable design, a 115 kV line, and by state law, when you do that, we want to have that capability now. When we construct it, it puts it into that category of above 100 kV, and the state requires this process. Whereas if it were to remain below 100 kV, we would not have to go through the state's process on this. We would just need a local use permit as well. So, any questions or concerns, or Kyle, have I covered?
And the other, just another issue that's being identified or addressed also is, I know L&O is working with Nick on that the utility ordinance requirements also. So, and that's being dealt with locally in addition to the permit stuff.
And the right-of-way.
Right, the right-of-way setback.
Right.
Yep.
Mr. Chair. And also, this, Nick, you last week talked about the substation as well, too. There's going to be some reconfiguring there, so this will go hand in hand with that substation as well, too. The Pipestone substation with the road work, there's going to be some stuff coming up there, too. And that's part of this transmission line coming into it.
Yes, that would be the southern
The southern end of
interconnection
that,
point
yeah.
of this line segment. Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. Kurt, from the Holland sub going north, that's already 115 kV?
It actually goes from that point on the northern end of this line segment is what L&O refers to as Holland or rural Holland substation. From that point, it goes almost directly westerly, not northerly, but
Yes.
west from that point.
Over to Flandreau.
Towards the Flandreau area, yes. That's the general locale of how we transmit power into the county, into the area. So.
I certainly would support your new line, you're replacing this line. In fact, I know this line quite well.
Okay.
So as far as us being the governmental authority, then what would it entail for us from a workload standpoint, Kyle? Is it something that's going to put more demands on you to accept this?
I don't see much. I've talked to DGR, who is the engineering firm for L&O. Like I said, they will pretty much put together the entire environmental assessment that's required. There's a Public Utilities Commission website that it will need to be posted on. It gets posted in the EQB Monitor for public comment. The county I will work with them. We need to have, I believe, one local meeting, which is typically something I can hold with the Planning Commission for public input. And then once all of that's done, we can hold the public hearing for the conditional use permit, bring recommendations to the board, and then the board will take normal action on the conditional use permit. So talking with DGR and L&O, I don't see any significant workload impacts other than that we are ultimately the responsible entity.
Mr. Chair, have all the landowners been already contacted with this project, or are they aware of the possibility of this coming through?
I don't believe they've been contacted yet, but that's very imminent, that especially if this gets approved today, we'll be moving forward with making contact with
Next
them
step or
regarding
whatever.
easements and so forth, so.
Yep. I did also check with Nobles County. They did a project with L&O a number of years back just to see how that went, and it sounded like everything went very smoothly with that process, the noticing of the environmental assessment and everything, so.
Is this line something that can be just put in with a blade, or does it require a big ditch to be dug through the farm? Through
This
the?
will be an overhead power line. This is
Oh,
a
overhead,
transmission
okay,
line,
okay.
so if this was a lower distribution class line, then yes, then underground is more of an option from a cost perspective, but due to the voltage and the nature of transmission lines, are typically done overhead, especially in rural areas.
More economical?
Yes.
Yep. So what specific action are we looking at today?
We are not required to take any action as of today. I just wanted to make the board aware of us accepting this responsibility and getting your blessing on that. And if you were opposed, it's something that we would need to request that within a 60-day window. So I just wanted to keep the board informed of what obligations we were accepting based on this letter from the Public Utilities
I
Commission.
certainly don't have a problem.
No, I'm very much in favor of this, so if we need to take action today, we certainly can. I'd be willing to do that, but if there isn't any action to take.
No, there is no action. It's just being aware that will be the LGU for this project. We'll be going through the environmental assessment process first, which will probably take 60 days or thereabouts, and then from there, we will proceed with the conditional use permit process.
And you don't feel there's any substantial cost to us to be the LGU on this?
We do have it in our ordinance. If there are substantial costs or any costs, we have the ability to
Pass that
charge that back to the applicant. So it is built into the ordinance that these do come up quite frequently in some counties, and they are quite expensive if the county has to put together the documentation. So we do have that ability to charge anything back if we have those costs.
But you'd be working in conjunction with DGR and L&O on this, so
Correct.
our actual time investment is going to be minimal, is that what you're telling me?
Yes, yep.
DGR has several of these types of projects in process and takes an approach where we put together go through all the environmental requirements, put together an environmental report, provide that to Kyle and submit it accordingly. So I would agree that there'd be little to no cost on the county's part.
This isn't something new. It's something that they're doing
Yeah.
quite frequently.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I'd say move ahead.
Yep. Blessing granted.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, next on the agenda is County Attorney Demain Sandy, who is not available right now.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend since Nick is here, let's talk to Nick, and then we'll handle Domain when he comes in.
Okay.
Or
Nick
any-
Berm.
We'll get done with Nick soon enough, we can do some other business, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hello?
Well, I guess I'm here, it's kind of as a continuation of what they were just talking about. It's the segment of our CASA 25 mile east of town that we've talked about possibly rebuilding. I guess I was contacted by their engineer, and they wanted to put this line at 33 feet, which is the current right-of-way. But if we intend to rebuild that road, I feel we should try to purchase the right-of-way now have that line installed at the new right-of-way, so we don't have to relocate anything later. So I met with the Road and Bridge Committee. That was their recommendation as well. I agree with it. So I guess the real question here is if that's the board's intent to rebuild that someday. I feel we should proceed with purchasing the right-of-way now.
How much land are you thinking about, like 10 feet on each side, or 15 or 20 feet, or you have any idea there?
We'd probably try for 27, so it'd be out to 6, yes, yep, so it'd be out to 60-foot right-of-way, which is what we, kind of our standard, the last 11 years or whatever I've been here, you know, we've bought to 60 feet. We can generally fit what we need to in that area, so. I'm not necessarily asking to change the 5-year plan right now, but it's kind of intent towards the 5-year plan, so that's why I wanted to discuss it.
Now's our chance.
Yes, now would be the time to do it.
Where it's up.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may, in fact, I have a question for Kurt on this, if I could. That particular road then, from the substation going up to Highway 23, we're about a mile, it's a long
Quarter mile.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're talking from Highway 30 up to 23?
No, from the substation up to Highway 23, because that's where this transmission line's coming in.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's about a mile?
Quarter mile, I
Quarter
believe,
mile.
roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's existing 33 right-of-way.
Yep.
Kurt, what type of construction are you proposing? Is it going to be a single-pole herringbone construction again?
Yeah, the design of the line is pretty much the same from all the way through, except where we have to transition from side of road to side of road. There'd be a little bit special structures, but generally a tangent structure, run-of-the-mill structure is going to be a single pole design with horizontal post
The
insulation.
herringbone.
Yep.
And you'll probably be, it looks like this, you'll be on the east side of that road, apparently?
In that area, I believe that is the case, is
Okay.
what's originally proposed, subject to change, I suppose, but that's.
My thought process here is just between 33-foot and 50-foot center line, and because it is overhead construction, single pole, instead of buying right-of-way, can we just request that when they set these poles, they set them at the 50-foot line instead of the 33-foot line? That way, for one thing, there's not a lot of elevation change, so you're probably not going to be cutting back into the field anywhere. You probably wouldn't need to take any temporary easements. So if they just build the line at the 50-foot center line, at this point, it shouldn't be a problem in the future, should it?
Well, we would probably want to buy it at 60, not 50. For when we rebuild, we generally try to slope out to 60 feet.
Okay.
But, I guess if the line was installed there now, we could wait on the right-of-way.
So that would just involve the easement then between L&O and the property owners if they'd let them put pole out at 60-foot center line instead of the 33-foot center line for that short distance there, because we're only talking a real short distance.
Yeah, that should work for us. I guess we wanted to wait on the right-of-way, but.
Because otherwise, your idea is to buy the right-of-way for that entire stretch between Highway 23 and Highway.
For right now, we just buy that quarter mile, just where they wanted to work, and then the rest could wait till we wanted to do something with it.
And then we would allow the property owner then to still farm that if they
Yeah.
owned the right-of-way?
Yeah, I think they could just keep doing it as is. It doesn't matter, that part doesn't matter to me.
Any thoughts on this at all, Kurt? Do you think it's plausible to have the property owner just give easement to go ahead and put it at 60-foot right now? Seeing how he's going to be farming around anyway, he's going to farm around, and what are we talking, probably 6-7 poles there?
Yeah, I think that'd be workable. The only thing would be if the landowner questioned, whether or not this is really going to happen or not, and we're going to propose we put them, what would be, 15, 20 feet into their property.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so if there was some type of a, the county, I don't know exactly what that would be, but some document or.
Understanding.
Or maybe just Nick's planning or whatever so that the landowners it's not just us telling the landowner this, that the county
Right.
it is their plan to do that, so. But I think that would be workable to locate it there, and they're only gonna be agreeable to that if they have buy-in that this is eventually gonna become public.
And
right
some of
away.
them might oppose the road being widened. or whatever, because that'll bring more traffic there as well.
But they're gonna eliminate all that dust.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's something you
Yeah,
might have to
dust.
work together with as we go forward, and then, but the county's talked about doing that for as long as I've been on the board.
Yeah.
At some point,
If we just move ahead.
because there is a lot of
Right
traffic
ways.
cutting through there to the
That's
sale
kinda-
barn
that's
and
where-
and all that, so.
And as we approach those particular landowners that may be affected by that, we can maybe work jointly with Nick and work together on that if you're agreeable to it.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll do whatever.
Let's get the right of way. Be
Yeah,
done
we
with
can,
it.
I'm not opposed to that either.
As we go north then from Highway 23, then for the rest of County Road 69, would there be any rationale, is that ever going to be widened out?
I doubt it. I've spoke with our maintenance foreman. I don't think it's worth doing anything out there.
Traffic count doesn't warrant that.
No, and that'd be all levy money. It's not a state aid highway, so no, I don't think it's worth messing with that part.
I think
But
this
they-
would be a nice improvement for traffic around Pipestone. It'd eliminate a little bit of the truck traffic and the
Sale barn.
sale barns
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
it'd be a help for the sale barn, of our current traffic counts.
It'd be convenient for the people that go there all the time and cut through.
I've heard from a few property owners too, they're just sick and tired of the dust. and-
Well, you take like Columbia or a few of them places, they don't have to go through town all the time, they can take the shortcut.
So I guess, back to the showing intent thing, I kind of feel like if we bought the right of way, that would kind of show our
Certainly,
intent.
I was
I
thinking
think so,
short of
too.
buying it, if there would be just some, if the landowner at all questioned about, the real intent there, but I don't think it'll be an issue, but,
And if you decide to buy it now, they can still use the land until the road's actually done, 2 years or 5 years or whatever down the road.
Yeah, they can farm it or
You still
whatever,
use
but
it,
we have
so-
the right to it.
Yeah.
Any guesstimate what kind of cost we'd be looking at to buy that right away? I know you haven't had a chance to work up the numbers.
I guesstimated it, I'm thinking between $5,000 and $10,000 to buy it for that quarter mile on the part that they want to work in. So that's probably all we'd pursue right now. We'd probably bring up some questions from the others, and we just kind of explain to them what's going on. And
I think I'd just as soon move forward with Nick's plan and buy it if we can and start working towards the project. Let's get going with it.
just the stretch that they
Whatever,
want.
you can put
I'd
your
say the
feelers
whole
out there
mile,
and
quarter.
and see what's available, if they're willing to work with you, or if they're, you might as well start trying to make it happen.
So maybe that's a way to.
First step in a long journey here, but
So if you want, we could contact everybody along there, and everybody that's interested in doing it now could, and then if you got somebody who's a little on the fence.
setting a
who's-
timeline when you're gonna do
Right.
it, but you're just initiating the
Right, we just,
conversation with them too, and see what their feelings are.
we just leave the rest of them alone if they're not interested right now, and then when it gets closer, we'd try to work with them.
So in that short stretch, there's more than one owner in that little quarter mile stretch?
I believe it's only one owner in that quarter mile. Kind of going off memory, I believe they live there and they farm it. No, it's Adorn, I believe,
Oh,
the name is, so.
Well, see what kind of feedback you get with the people that live there.
Right, and they might be violently opposed to this too, I don't know.
Sounds like they'll be contacting them about the power line as well, so, some changes are coming for those
Will you be
people.
removing the trees then in the grove portion?
that would be part of the agreement that we would try to negotiate with the landowner. If there are some trees that would be an issue, we'd typically try to address that in the easement or an associated agreement to take care of that, yes.
And if they do something like that, it might assist the county's project too, because sometimes trees have to be taken out anyway, so.
Right, if they, we'd probably remove out to 60 roughly, in our future projects, so if they took some of those out within that 60 feet, that would be a little bit of a savings for us as well.
I think most of the trees on that stretch are on the east side of the road, aren't they?
Yeah.
On that farm site, yeah, there's a pretty big grove there, yeah.
Need a motion, or you just wanna?
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess, it wouldn't hurt, but if you don't want to, you'd have to approve the right-of-way payment later anyway, so.
I'd make the motion, we move forward and try to acquire the right of way.
For that whole mile and a quarter?
Yes.
Okay.
I would second that.
A motion, a second to purchase the right-of-way of Kazaa 25 on the east side,
Both sides.
or on both sides?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just clarification, you said 1.25 miles. I thought it was a quarter mile.
No, it
So we're
goes all
doing
the
the
way up
whole
to
stretch
23.
from 30 to 23.
The road project would be 1.25 miles. They need just the north quarter mile for their power line.
Okay.
Just clarification, Chairman, or Commissioner Wildermuth, it was, the Road and Bridge Committee discussed that because there has been interest in paving that road in the future, and if we might see some savings in purchasing right away now rather than years down the road.
Yeah, and I guess as far as that goes, I suppose we'd probably offer the same price for that we're currently offering on our,
Yep.
that we've established for our CSA 13 work that we're kind of wrapping up now, so.
Because I guess my confusion was from the substation going south, I didn't think you're rebuilding that line at this point.
That is correct. That line is staying.
Where it's at now.
Unaltered, that, from Pipestone going, the Pipestone is a substation, the rural substation, which is at the intersection of, 111th and 69, is that correct? This is County Road.
Yeah, down to there, but below 23, that's 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
From that intersection of those two rural roads, they're both gravel today, as I
Correct.
recall. There's a rural substation that's owned by L&O. From that point going south, that line has a larger capacity and a newer design, so that is not part of our 7-mile project that we're proposing from that point to the north.
So then I guess my confusion is, why do we want to spend the money to buy the extra right-of-way if we're not doing anything with that line at this point?
Because if we did the road project, it would be, from that substation, it would be 1/4 mile north and a full mile south. So the road project would be 1.25 miles.
Yes, I understand, but we don't have anything specifically on the calendar to do that. So why do we want to spend the money now buying right-of-way that we don't need at this point? The only right-of-way that we need is that 1/4 mile right-of-way going to the north.
We can do it either way. It doesn't matter. It's just, I don't really have a.
I don't have a strong feeling either way.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're all clear, we're on the same
Yeah.
page here, that we realize that we're buying an extra mile that we don't need at this point.
That's what the motion was for.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes we run into problems, purchasing right of way, and, it might, if we talked with everybody now and got the people on board that were willing now, that, landowners change, so, that might help us in the future, but I'll do it either way. I don't really have a strong feeling either way.
But your off-the-cuff estimate of $5,000, that was just for the 1/4 mile?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So it'll be something like that.
Yeah, it'll be, 70,000, I don't know, for the whole thing.
Move forward with the project, you gotta start sometime.
Yeah, it'll have to be done eventually if we're gonna do that project for sure, which I would.
We've talked about it for years.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, we'll go to the vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion carries. Anything else for us today, Nick?
Nope, that's all I had.
Anybody else have any questions for Nick while he's here? Thank you.
Thank you.
We are a few minutes early, but if County Attorney Demain Sandy's ready, he's next up on the agenda. Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, I invited County Attorney Sandy in to talk a little bit more about the discussion that was at the last meeting regarding the issue down in Osborne Township with animals and right-of-way and fencing. Get more opinion, legal thoughts, and things that we should do. We've got some ideas I think we should hear.
Okay, thank you.
After that meeting, I spoke with Kevin Zalstra, and he wanted to let me know what his thoughts were. And he went away from the meeting with the understanding possibly that the town board had the authority to do its own fencing ordinance. And I looked at what he provided me, and my general feeling was that the town board could only enact a partition ordinance to override the state partition ordinance. that was not going to accomplish any objectives for the town, and it probably would have been futile. But, as I looked at, the issue a little bit more, I thought, we don't have a state ordinance out, or state law out there that relates to fencing along public rights-of-way. There's nothing. It's just the partition. If animals get out, if they're stray, there's a right of impoundment, civil damages, things of that nature. But there's practically nothing out there from a public safety standpoint that requires landowners to maintain their fences in a way to keep their animals off the public right-of-way and, so motorists don't hit them. So I thought, well, talking with Kevin, I thought, under the public safety aspect of the board's, basically your powers, that you could enact a possible ordinance that would deal with the issue. I mean, if it's an issue countywide, which you want to look at, not just a Osborne Township ordinance, you could enact a sweeping ordinance that says if you're going to maintain animals, and just to break it down to its bare minimum, you got to maintain your fences. If they get out, yeah, the impoundment statute can apply, but after a certain period of time, it becomes a danger where you can make it a misdemeanor. That's a way to deal with it. But logistically, it's an issue of trying to find if someone else has done one, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you do have to reinvent the wheel, it'd be me doing it. I've given it some thought on what would be a good procedure, what would be a good way to deal with it. Obviously, the sheriff's office already has the authority to go out if they find an animal out on the right-of-way, out on the road. If they got a trailer with them, which they don't normally carry, but you never know. I think the sheriff has access to a livestock trailer, and I think some of the other guys do too. They can impound that. And, the neighboring landowners can do it too. But again, there comes a point where you just got to take a little bit more teeth into the matter if you can. And I kind of go back to what we did with the social host ordinance recently. You were looking at an issue, is there a hole in the law? And there was a hole in the law there, and that's kind of what got the coalition to go forward and say, let's do a social host ordinance. Well, we have a hole in the law here too. I don't think it's, basically these landowners where people have animals getting stray and, crossing over, for them to keep them, it's just not practical. For them to follow the civil law, it's just not practical. It'd be easier if they would just, we had some teeth, if it's practical, from the county to be able to say, we're going to bring you in on a criminal charge of a misdemeanor. If you can't keep your animals in, you're going to pay a fine, you're going to have issues. So that was just my thought process.
Do you know if there's a requirement for farmers or people with livestock to have liability insurance if they do get out?
I do not know if there's a requirement. I would hope that it's a practical aspect that you will have premises liability insurance if you...
Or they're responsible for the livestock that's loose, are they not?
Absolutely. One of my early cases when I got out of law school, with the firm I was working with, was a horse that got loose up in one of the northern counties and got plowed into by a driver going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. Broke his neck. Yeah, eventually he walked again, but that horse was out on a blacktop with a speed limit of 55, and the owner was known by the neighbors to always have his animals out. It was a simple civil liability, but it doesn't address the problem of how can we keep the animals off the roads anyhow. So I don't know. It was just a thought process, trying to talk to Kevin and express his concerns with the Osborne board a little bit, and so I threw it to Steve, I threw it to Kyle as to whether or not it's a possibility that it may be something that we may want to explore. Based on my knowledge and my recollection, in the 20 years I've been here, I can think of, and the sheriff's department would have better records, but I can think of at least probably 15 cases, somewhere right around there, where I've gotten wind that animals have been out, and it's been a repeated type of stuff, or repeated type of action. Cattle out, I know that there was a time the sales barn had one get out and was running around Highway 75. There was one that got out of the butcher shop here, D&T's. That happens at times in a rural area, but if it's habitual, then there's the issue. You know, you can't maintain your fences every,
Get loose once in a while, and then that's not the problem, because they normally want them back, and they come and find them, or they, whatever.
and they go out and check their fences once gets out. They are responsible landowners who make sure that their fences are maintained in a way not to let the animals out. But every now and then you'll have an irresponsible landowner who really doesn't care. And if the animal's roaming, it's roaming.
What's triggered this is the sheriff's department has been to this one individual's place, I don't know how, 50 times, 100, I don't know how many times, but it's enough. I mean, everybody's tired of it, and the sheriff, I'm sure, doesn't want to keep going there all the time. Maybe if there was some law that we could make some changes there, maybe it would be worth it in the long run here, I don't know.
Yeah, and just for the board's knowledge, I mean, you can't look at this as one individual. It's got to be, you know, a general public safety process across the entire county. You know, that's how it works. Do we have an issue where we need such an ordinance where it would be helpful for the county board and the residents of the county to have something in place to address certain conduct? That's, you know, that was my thoughts a little bit. You know, so that's why I sent an email off to Steve and off to Kyle to kind of get their thoughts too. Because again, my role is neither to support nor be against any proposed legislation or ordinance. It's just to draft it, make sure it's constitutional, make sure it will uphold the challenge. And in part of this process, I kind of stepped outside of that, but I want to step back in. I just wanted to throw the idea out there to them and let them run with it. And if they want, and if the board wants to, you know, explore such an ordinance, we should be able to put something together that will be constitutional, be fair-minded, and address conduct. And my thought was that, like you said, any animal can get out at any time. You don't know when an animal's going to get out. You don't know when a tree's going to go down the fence and expose a gap. One time itself is never going to be a problem for anybody, because most landowners will go out, they'll fix the problem, they'll make sure the animals stay in. But once you get to that 3, 4, 5 times, even 3 in a calendar year would seem to be an issue that needs to have some addressing.
Thank you. Kyle?
Just a few comments. I thought about this too, and I did check around. There are some counties that have them, others think it's just totally the craziest idea to ever put into place. But my biggest fear is that we're primarily focusing on one individual. And I don't know if it's in best practice to put an ordinance into place for maybe 1 to 2 people at the most. My other concern is that I know this individual with other statutes that we've taken misdemeanor action on, it tends to not be significant. So I guess my bigger question would be is, if we do enact an ordinance, we obviously will have a violation. So we will send a letter of you know, a violation of our ordinance, but then the next action would be to take them to court. And the practice, and a lot of times in court, is that they would just plead guilty and say, yeah, my fence was down, or so I don't know if that's the recourse that we're wanting that will address the issue in the long run. And that's my fear, is that we'll have a lot of procedures to take action, they'll be in violation, but at the end, we still won't get compliance. I don't know, Domain.
That's a concern always. I mean, because a misdemeanor by its very nature doesn't have a lot of teeth behind it. They just don't. You know, a maximum sentence of 90 days in jail or a fine of $1,000 or both. You know, I can think back several years ago that we had some people that, you know, Kyle brought a case to us for violating the noxious weed law. One of the people, they fought it, had a court trial. Judge Christensen ruled in their favor, and he acquitted. Another person wanted a jury trial. We had a jury trial. That person was convicted for violating the noxious weed law. And my recollection of the sentence was that the judge, being rather annoyed with the individual, gave him the maximum fine and gave him jail for a while for just not spraying his thistles. I don't recall having another violation from down in that area since then. So yeah, there was a little bit of compliance afterwards, at least substantially enough so that you know, the town viewers going out there checking for weeds didn't bring anything to Kyle's attention, and Kyle didn't have to bring anything to my attention. So it's possible that we can get compliance. Will we? I can't tell.
That's one of my concerns. The other one is that in most cases, you're typically looking at a quarter of land. The fence will blow out in the south corner, southwest corner, not accessible from the road, not visible from the road. We don't have we don't have the ability to just walk out into somebody's pasture, nor do I want to verify if the fence was or was not down. At least most of the complaints I received on this individual, it's the southern fences that are typically down where they're accessing the neighbor's property. So I guess that's another hurdle is if we do have an ordinance, are we able to identify and confirm the violation to enforce? So there's multiple concerns that come to mind. The enactment of an ordinance is fairly simple, but the enforcement and documentation is more significant and difficult.
Mr. Chair, so if I understand you correctly then, Domain, we do have legal standing now that if there is an animal that's out, we can impound that animal.
The sheriff's office has the authority to impound adjoining landowners. If the animal gets on someone else's land, have the authority to impound. But it ends up being for either one of them, how big of a pain is it to go forward and follow the existing law? With impoundment, there are costs to feed that the landowner or the animal owner must pay. There's ability to sell the animal to recover those costs. But it ends up being a procedural nightmare that I doubt anybody does it. I really doubt they want to follow through with it. It's just easier to say, well, I'm going to keep your cow for a while. You're going to owe me $20 and I'll give it back to
A
you.
lot of times these animals create crop damage and stuff out there too in the fields. They're wandering around and they walk down the corn and whatever, and then they wander up on the road and then they catch them. But in the meantime, they might have done $500 of damage to the crops or whatever, so.
Because of
It's hard to put all that into.
Because of the habitual nature of this particular case, is this an avenue that might send a message? So next time there is an animal that's out, we impound it. Again, yes, we don't have a horse trailer, but we certainly can hire out. We can hire one of the neighbors that's got a horse trailer, impound the animal, bring it up here. What do we do with it? I would assume sale barn. It'd have to go to sale barn.
That'd probably be the best place, and it just sits there until.
Then how long does the owner have recourse to reclaim that animal? Or can we impound it and sell it immediately and be done with it?
I'd have to look at the law a little bit for more specifics on that. I just know that there's a procedure out there to deal with it, and I didn't look at the timelines with any specificity.
That way we don't get into the scrutiny of the south fence or whatever fence. We don't care about his fences, we care about his animals. So if his animals are out there, we take them away, we eliminate the problem. Of course, he's got 100 heads, so hopefully, after he loses a couple horses, he might decide that he's getting tired of losing his horses and fix his fence. Or we could be down there every week picking up a horse, I don't know.
You know, I appreciate Kyle's thoughts of it too. I mean, the enforcement aspect is it always comes into play. You know, I don't anticipate that this would be something that would fall back on the zoning and conservation office to be able to go out there and determine if the fence is maintained. You know, like they do with the noxious weed law. I think, you know, it's just an issue of animal out, whose is it? How many times is it happening? Where's the problem lie? You know, enforcement is going to be what you see on the road and people calling in saying the animals are out again.
Mr. Chair, I'd be interested in knowing more details of what our recourse is. If we do impound the animal, how long do we have to keep it? What can we do with it?
I can report back to you on that. I can get something to Steve that he can pass on to everybody, and you can get an idea what the timeline is under that impoundment law and the various procedures that have to go through.
And this might sound really off the wall, but do we have the authority to euthanize that animal?
As far as I know, no.
But
What
if
about the
opposed to
neighbors? Are they're allowed to confiscate an animal as well as anyone else if they're on their property?
I lost the first part of your sentence
Well,
there.
if one of the neighbors, if one of the cattle wanders across or a horse and he says, I'm gonna keep him until they pay me for damages.
Absolutely.
So
When-
that's
if they-
something that they can do.
Absolutely. You know, if a neighbor impounds, they have to provide notice to the owner. Then that procedure kicks in again on what can the person who impounded the animal, whether it's the neighbor or whether it's law enforcement, do. But it just seems kind of a hollow type of thing. Like I said, the procedure that seems to be more of a nightmare than what you're going to get out of it with the neighbor. is gonna do, and they don't wanna go into court every year on a conciliation court complaint and sue someone for $500 of crop damage because a couple cattle get out where they're not supposed to.
Yeah. And they have to feed them while they have them confined, so
Yep.
it ends up costing them more than it's worth to try and hold them.
They'd be able to recover that cost too, wouldn't they?
That'd be a cost.
I guess our law enforcement's busy enough without having to go out and confiscate animals and lose horses and
I agree.
get a horse trailer on the back of Mike's pickup and run around the country. And, yeah, I don't know where we're going with this, but we do know that something should happen. We don't know quite what to do about it.
You know, I just wanted to put the thought out there, and that's all I want to do to determine whether or not it's a possibility. Someone might think that, you know, again, I don't want to focus on an individual. That is not the way we do anything. It is a county-wide issue. We think about anywhere in the county that there's a possibility of animals being stray, getting out in the public right of way, because you should be able to drive down the road at 10 o'clock at night. You can worry about a deer, you can worry about a dog or a possum, but you shouldn't have to worry about a horse or a cow.
Just a question, Mike, do you guys get a lot of complaints on livestock? I mean, that would warrant an ordinance?
So as I listen to the discussion, I think back over the years of 20-plus years, like Domain uses as an example, I can think of 2 other situations similar to this we've been in since I've been here that are continually habitual and maybe focused in one area. It's not something that is.
And I know what you're talking about.
All the time, and we we've dealt with Domain, his office, and Jim with that through the years too. Like I said, last meeting, for us to have a tool, it needs to work. It needs to work for Domain to be able to support that. That's what he does, and we will use the tools we have in front of us. I will caution though, whenever you start taking someone's private property like an animal, you're liable for that animal. If you take that animal and it's not in good health, you're gonna have veterinarian bills. Will the sale barn take it? That's a private business. He doesn't have no obligation to. There will be costs with that.
Who will be paying?
The county.
County will
County.
pay for all that. Those are probably something that can be recouped back. That would be another question for the county attorney's office. But when you're dealing with these situations, you're typically dealing with people who, and I'm not singling this person out as an example, but I'm saying sometimes it's not cost effective to be able to get that money back. We deal with this with dogs and cats a lot that are at large. We have a problem we have a place to take them, but it's not always, discretion is probably to the better air of saying, okay, go find this landowner, the animal owner, you get it back to him, you talk to him, you cite him for that animal at large. In this case, I don't know if that's an option or practicality for an ordinance to be made at the local level for that to happen with these animals. And you look at other areas, like Kyle said, in the county, yes, we have animal calls. We live in a rural area, and animals will get out. But for the most part, everybody's taking their part and making sure that gets taken care of. And we're probably dealing with even more depth of an issue here than the animals just being out. We're trying to educate, and the education's not working either on that end of trying to educate this particular owner of that animal. I don't know what fixes it either. We don't make legislation, we just work with what we have in front of us.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Mike, you mentioned 2 cases in the past 20 years. How were those finally resolved?
The one case, the person got rid of the animals because of other reasons why they had to go. And we worked with that case. The other case, they simply just decided that we were as much of a nuisance as their animals being out. We continually were persistent in making sure they knew they needed to do a better job. It took several months, if not a couple years, to get that done, but it happened. In this case, yeah, we feel like, I guess sometimes I feel like we're kind of in the same situation here, but like I said last time, we get a report, we go, we deal with it. We will do everything we can to deal with it, no matter what it is, no matter where it is. In this case is no exception to that. But as practical in law may be as impounding an animal, it's not just as simple as showing up with a horse trailer and saying, here, there's a lot of liability that comes with that. It's like when we go to a rollover crash and there's animals all running around from a truck. We can't just start dispatching these animals. I mean, they're private property. So euthanize them and stuff is not really an option unless it's the best nature that a veterinarian has decided, you know, that needs to happen. I would caution the impounding of the animal part as a practicality standpoint.